That's a good place to put it. Well, the Arab League is holding an emergency meeting to discuss the Israeli operation. Hamas, which controls Gaza, says all options are open. Thousands of Palestinians marched on the Gaza Strip on Monday night to protest against the Israeli offensive. Armed groups in the enclave said they will respond.
We hold the occupation fully responsible for its aggression against our people in Jenin, and the response of the resistance will not be late. All options are open to respond to the Israeli aggression and to defend our people and sanctities.
Now let's bring in our special correspondent, Karl Bostic, who has reported extensively in Israel and the occupied territories, is monitoring developments, and he joins us right now from London. Karl, I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday. Can you tell us more about this particular attack in Tel Aviv and what this means for a possible escalation in the violence we've already witnessed?
Well, what you saw transpiring was in broad daylight. Actually, it was a pickup truck. The driver approached a shopping mall where there was a bus stop outside of it. The driver drove his pickup truck onto the pavement, the sidewalk, and rammed into a line of pedestrians waiting at the bus stop. He rammed into the pedestrians, and then he got out and began stabbing people. This all happened really just in a matter of seconds. But at the same time, you had one of the bystanders who was armed. And officially, they say he was neutralized, but the driver, he was shot dead on sight by the civilian who was armed. Israeli officials later revealing that he was from the West Bank, who had received a medical permit to enter Israel for medical treatment. And instead, he was driving this truck onto the pavement to go into a line of pedestrians at the bus stops. And already we saw a response from the Hamas militant faction saying this was an heroic action. You have the Iranian-backed Islamic Jihad saying that this was an initial and a natural response to what had happened with the operation in Jenin these past 2 days.
So Hamas is praising the attack in Tel Aviv as a heroic revenge for the Jenin operation. What is the Israeli military saying about its plans for this particular operation?
Well, when it began on Monday, they were saying that this operation would last as long as was necessary, as long as it would take, they would stay there. But already they've achieved most of their goals. In other words, their goals being to wipe out so-called command and control centers. In other words, for example, they found a command and control center inside a mosque at this Jenin refugee camp settlement, command and control center, in the sense that it actually had access to cameras that could see the entire Jenin city area for any possible Israeli troop movements. That was destroyed. They also found underground passageways underneath this mosque, which was run by one of the militant factions, the Islamic Jihad, which was basically a storage place for weapons and explosives. And they were also going after production sites for these explosives and weapons. In all, they had a target list of about 120 or at least dozens of targets to find, destroy, or quote, neutralize. And they only have about 10 targets remaining. In the meantime, they also cut off the water and electricity supply to the camp, which led to thousands of people fleeing the refugee camp into the city. So it's a real crisis in that sense. And as far as escalation goes, the Israelis don't want to stay there any longer. What they want to do is this. They want to end the mindset that Jenin can be a safe haven for what they call terrorists, noting that as many as 50 attacks have been launched from Jenin this year alone, 50 attacks either inside the West Bank against settlers, Israeli settlers, or actually into Israel itself. And they also want to prevent further attacks into Israel. So they want to end this so-called mindset. And at the same time, it's already been one of the deadliest years with in the conflict, with more than 140 Palestinians killed, many of them civilians and children, and at least 30 Israelis killed as well. So this could actually spiral out of control unless there's an effort to contain it.
All right, what is the likelihood of a new intifada against Israel?
You have to keep in mind this is only localized target against Jenin. Jenin is the northernmost part of the West Bank. It's far away from Ramallah, which is the capital of Palestinian Authority, and also East Jerusalem, where there's a significant Palestinian influence. So really, it kind of operates on its own, because what's been allowed to happen is that this refugee camp has been allowed to become, it's really a vacuum of sorts, because the Palestinian Authority, they don't police it themselves. There's no security there. It's really policed by different militant factions called the Jenin Brigade. But meanwhile, you've got the most far-right government in Israeli history, which has vowed to increase settler occupation in the West Bank and to do more to eradicate the violence, which is what we saw today. I think unless you see more attacks going inside Israel, for example, Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, that's what could trigger an escalation. Or if Gaza starts firing rockets into Israel, that's what you had with the Second Intifada, where at least 3,000 Palestinians were killed and hundreds of Israelis killed. We are nowhere near close to that now, but it's now something that people are really concerned about.
Okay, but just before you go, the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, says the armed man who shot dead the terrorist in Tel Aviv is further proof of the importance of arm-bearing civilians. Do you think that this is going to help in any way, introducing more guns into the situation?
Well, just keep in mind that, it's a national requirement. All Israelis by the age of 18, it's mandatory military service of men and women. So they all have military training. So it's only, really just a procedure for them to get a license to carry a gun, whether it's concealed or not. So already it's a tense armed situation. It's not unusual to be in a crowd of people where many of them wear guns. And basically the Israelis are saying that if we hadn't had a civilian who was armed on site, this could have been a far worse tragedy.
All right, I want to say many thanks to you, Karl Bostic, for your time here on Newsday.